Having fun and games tonight. Couldn't get my printer to work. There's nothing unusual for Britain's Hidden History, is there? Well, hi everybody and welcome. This is another live show. And let me start by firstly congratulating King Charles III and his Queen Camilla on their coronation. And I hadn't intended to watch the coronation at all, but I did. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a bit of a spectacle. And I still don't have a strong feeling either way on the royalty. But there we are. Well, today we've got Arnie and his violin playing. And also in the music corner, we have two flutists, some flute music. Two Britain's Hidden History members providing the copy there. Then we've got video shorts with John and Adam Griffiths, and then we've got Alan Wilson and Paul Hartell, and of course we got Ross Broadstock. So over to you, Arnie, to kick us off. Thank you, Arnie. Keep the videos coming. We need a few more of them. I think that was the Portsmouth song, wasn't it? So over to the two flutists now then. Beautiful.
It's like sound, isn't it?
And so here I am with Michael Parry Jones, flutist.
Yeah.
Lovely. And this is Llanilled Core, holy place of St. Illyd. And through there is the opening to the core. I filmed that, of course, so that's why it's not very good filming. And that was my friend Michael Parry-Jones who introduced me to Britain's hidden history. He knew about my love of Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett's books, and the books are with their collaborators. And we were watching out for where Jesus is buried, and he's the one who told me it's been published. So thank you, Mike. About a week ago, Margaret and myself popped over to West Wales and we visited Nevin. And in Nevin Church they have a windowsill and also a standing stone outside with Ogham script running down the edges. So I thought Ogham's script was actually based on music rather than writing. I might be totally wrong about that, but I thought there was a link. And so I thought, well, the best thing to do is to check out a Ross video. So I quickly went through the BHH playlist on the YouTube channel, and there's quite a few short videos on Ogham and Coilbren, etc. And so this one is an interesting Ross interview, which he undertook with John and Adam Griffiths. Now that playlists on the BHH YouTube channel is a huge resource, and you can't fail but to discover more and more about Britain's hidden history if you only open up the playlist and take a look inside. So here we go then with the interview with John and Adam Griffiths.
Welcome, Croeso, from a very sunny South Wales. So this is John Griffiths and his son Adam, who I had a chat with a few months ago about their groundbreaking, amazing work in reading what the stones, which are said to be Ogham, actually read using Coelbren, the old British writing system. They also did a lot of work showing the same thing with so-called Roman coins and how they can be read. It's fundamental. It gives hard evidence and it changes everything. So I hope you enjoy it. What is this and where is it? Where have you seen it?
So this is the Fanoni stone, known as the Ogham stone, in the British Museum, which I, on a visit, encountered, and thought I better send this to Dad, seeing as he.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a look at it. What they say it is a commemoration of Irish victory in Britain.
Which county was it? Devon.
Devon, yeah, Devon. And we had a look at the genealogies, and this guy isn't in there. So we think that they've looked at this and they've interpreted it. So, you know, this who they think, this Fanonus, they think his name is. But because of the kind of, you see a runic kind of, or a Coelbren-like accent to the letters, and you know that invites the opportunity to translate it or to attempt it. So with we had a look at, obviously with the Bardes, Iolo Morgannwg stuff and the 1688 dictionary, we had a look at possibilities for words. And
You've home without one, yes.
Yeah, there we go. I haven't got one yet. The online one, you know. So we had a look at the words. There's two sides to this time, and this is the first side. And we've got.
Excellent.
We've me and Dad, but we both did a translation, and we both often, if we do something at the same time, we have different, which is fascinating. We have different sort of perspectives on the same thing, but we kind of can see where each other are coming from. So that's really interesting.
You both translated it independently first. Is that the idea?
Yeah, indeed,
yeah. Good.
Yeah.
A double blind test.
No, exactly. It's great. To do it yourself as well. It's really, I really like translating it and then writing about it. I'm sure you know with the hieroglyphs, you know what that feels like. It's really good. So to prosper, that's what the Fano it can literally translate to, which is in the on the stone's front. So to prosper, we ourselves to prosper. There we go, clear image. clear message. So
we prosper. Okay, we got that straight away. That reads lovely, doesn't it?
absolutely. So yeah, straight away, and then we've got mad or there was a possibility for Mac as well, because it looks, it could be a Q, which is no Q, so go to CH, Macen, so it could be good. So good, well done. We, and then
Taking the U and using the variant for W. Yeah?
yes, indeed, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, Lord.
Yeah.
And then knee. Those are re and knee are actually very well, you know, I think who's the guy who's written the book on Colburn, but he says re and knee, they're very
The American guy.
the American guy, yeah. John Michael Griffiths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
So
yeah.
he outlines that re and knee are words, syllables to be used in Colburn. That, you know, that's his view. So that's interesting. So we've got a clear message to say to prosper. We ourselves good. Well done, Lord. We ourselves. So it's like you've got that celebratory kind of tone there.
So suddenly this is a message in Welsh instead of Irish.
Exactly. Yeah. Seeing as this guy doesn't turn up in the Irish genealogies, he's not a well-known. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's like doing making things Irish. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
The lettering might be. You look at the style of the lettering, and it has an Irish flavour. So what's called the Irish style, you can see on Irish stones, and there is that does cross. There is a kind of cut to the letters which has got a touch of that, but I don't think that's hard and fast, meaning it belongs to Ireland, because I think style can move across borders. People can be influenced by a style and take it up. So, but the hard fact really is the language, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And
we got Credic's invasion over to Ireland anyway. I mean, there's lots of Welsh settlement in Ireland, which gets completely written out of history. And we got what's called the Roman fort ruins just outside Dublin, which also seems to give further evidence to there being a Welsh occupation of a big part of Ireland, definitely in the 5th and 6th centuries. And it's recorded in the life of Patrick. They talk about, 5th century, I should say, a bit later, that the harsh treatment Ceredic gives out to the Irish people is one of the complaints of Patrick. So it's bizarre that it's always assumed that everything comes into Britain, isn't it? Nothing ever goes out. This is a general principle.
Yeah. It's a recurring motif, isn't it? That is it's interesting as to why that is, but we can.
Nothing ever flows out, language or culture or words or writing.
Yes.
Well, that's fantastic.
There's a flip side to the stone as well. There's a second message which the museum thought was done at a later time. It's not seen to be belonging to the same period as the front of the stone in their view. There's also an Ogham text on the edge of the stone as well.
The Ogham text, which really, our interpretation of it consolidates the rest of the message, which is really great. So, I mean, the Ogham on the side. I'll show you again. This stuff here, because this is an Irish, or they say it's an Irish writing style, but we can still make consonants, we can still make words, because it gives you a consonant. Each one of these separate sort of set of strokes, they give you a consonant. So it gives
the strokes will make up consonants. So you've just got to recognise that for example, on the left-hand side of the stone, you take that as the line, the baseline of the strokes. So you've got three, looks like 3 there, and then 4.
3 and a 4, yes.
3 and 4 on the other side. The spine is on the other side. That will indicate another sort of letter. You've got 4, looks like 5, and
lots.
4 and 2 perhaps.
4 and 2. There's
Yeah.
So they record as FSCQ, which goes to a K or a CH, and then a C and a D. So from that we can find words.
Yeah, which
So FS, foss, a ditch.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, so those strokes on the edge, you think do read as letters
Yeah.
as well? Then?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, you got to play
Oh,
around
okay.
because they only give you constants. You can play around with the vowels and see what you get, and
Yeah.
and you can make your own interpretation like that. But yeah,
So you've got FS is foss, a ditch. The CK becomes CK. We find koch, red. And for CD, we've got CAD, battles. We've got a ditch, and we've got red, battle.
that's all red ditch.
Yeah, battle, red, ditch was what we.
Yeah. Yeah,
So this seems to be a defensive situation,
yes,
doesn't it?
and if it's a ditch, indeed, yeah,
You can imagine a situation where you're defending your ground. You've got a defensive ditch. It's full of blood.
yeah,
Wow.
So
Yeah, there's
again,
been lots of conjecture about whether they're music notes or whatever, isn't it? But
yeah.
I think Alan Wilson will be delighted when he sees this as well. I'll send him this.
So you've got it's in context with the overall. So although it's in Ogham, it can be read in Welsh, and the context keeps in with the sense of a battle having been fought, and this supports it. It's not a different message.
Yeah, it's commensurate, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is the other side. I don't think we've got a photo to show you the back of the stone.
Right, this is written on the back of the stone. Okay.
Yeah, this is on the back. Yeah, we've got gag here, which it can go to gagging which is to chop or cleave. So that again backs up the notion of a kind of battle scene here. And then we've got ha, potentially, which is well done.
Beating again. Yeah, we've had that. Yeah, well done. Yeah.
So great, we've got we ourselves again. So it's like it quite, you know, you can see that it possibly reads quite clearly that it's we ourselves have cleaved well, you know.
Yes, yes. I'm with you now. Yes.
So
Still out for the Welsh syntax. I mean, changing the word order.
Yeah. So all the writings of peace are on that stone, and the general view from the British Museum is to say that the writing's done at different times, certainly from the front to the back. So there's a real difference of view there. So obviously it's viewed as an Irish stone. I don't know. It's difficult to. Their presentation is very convincing, and that's their sense of the Irish had come in and caused mayhem in Devon. They put up a marker stone to mark the event. Begs a lot of questions on the amount of time that takes to do, in the sense of finding a stone and positioning it and cutting it in the midst of all the rest of what might be going on.
And why no one got rid of it after they'd left? That's always the question I think of.
You'd have thought somebody would have taken it out. Well, we're back. Get rid of that, fellas.
Yeah, first thing you do is smash it up, isn't it? You'd think.
Makes much more sense to be a celebratory statement about having healthy ground.
Yes.
Which is what this appears to be. So this changes the history of the time and of the region. So just a reading of it changes.
I guess that's why it's dangerous stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I love this idea of sag ha ni. I mean, that's a sentence, you know. That's actually a sentence. There's no change needed at all to that, is there?
Mm-hmm.
Changing history, that's what BHH is all about, isn't it? Well done, John and Adam, and of course, great work, the three guys there, including Ross. And I mentioned earlier I messed up my printer. I was looking at a site about the Arthurian legends, and the guy whose site it is, he just wants to promote the legendary King Arthur. He doesn't want to hear the facts, and he's been referred to Alan Wilson years ago, and in fact they set up a correspondence. And so what I was reading was about how this gentleman was picking up Alan Wilson report on the Arturius Rex stone, and he said it's filius, not fili, and so he did a big Latin argument. So I'm wondering what was Alan Wilson's counter view then to that, because there must have been one. And lo and behold, I opened up Arturius Rex Discovered today. I turned to page 63 at random and read about the argument. And of course, Alan Wilson had much more logical conclusions to draw, as he always does. But when you look in the context as well, the gentleman talking about the Latin is talking about one small thing, but whereas we are looking at absolutely mounds of evidence and about much more than just one stone with a bit of bad Latin on it. There we are. So I was trying to print the gentleman's viewpoint from his article, and I messed up the printing. And I've got an error message that I can't get rid of. So I wonder how anything gets done in this movement. So every week we're asking for more contributors to put in their videos, as always. And if you do something on the Facebook group, then contact myself or Angie to get it onto the YouTube channel, and preferably to get it into one of the Sunday slots as a premiere on the Sunday slot. Thank you very much. One of our regular contributors is Paul Hartell, and Paul's looked into his archive. Remember, we were talking about all the film that he's got there on computers and hard drives in his storage. And he's delved into the archives and he's found one with Alan Wilson describing the death and internment of King Tudric. So we've had a bit of a chat about it. Let's take a look at the video.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you again.
Great to see you too, Paul. Thank you for joining.
No, it's my pleasure. I just wanted to share today some video of one of my early visits with Alan when he took me around to some of the sites. So in this case, we're going to be revisiting the story of King Tudric. So this is a visit where Alan took me to Tintern and Mathern and showed me the sites that are associated with the story of King Tudric, who, as most in the group know, but for those who may not, is Arthur II's grandfather. And his stained glass, which we'll see an image of in the video, is in Llandaff Cathedral, right next to Arthur II's. So yes, so this was a trip that I took, and this would have been a little less than 20 years ago, but this was the great man would have maybe been shy of 70 or maybe just 70. I don't know. I don't remember if he told me how old he was at the time.
He's going to be about that, isn't he?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
He's still very much in his prime and full of vigor. And so here we'll get to see him at a few places in here that are associated with King Tudric. And I hope everybody enjoys this short video.
I'm sure we will. And Tudric is the king who saw the angel, supposedly, to prophesy that he'd be meeting the end by having a head wound.
Yes, I mean, according to the Llandaff charters and some of the other sources, he was actually quite a successful king while he reigned before he decided to abdicate in favor of his son and spend the remainder of his life as a monk. Apparently battled the Saxons quite successfully. And I've seen references to Tudric and his battles with the Saxons that that indicate that he was so successful that they enjoyed a period of relative peace between the British and the Saxons. I mean, one reference, I don't remember where I saw this now, but one reference even mentioned a 30-year peace, which sounds remarkably like the story that's told about the Battle of Baden in, bringing a period of relative calm, a long period, decades-long period of calm between the British and the Saxons. So I don't know if that's just another part of muddy history, but in any case, he was supposed to be a great warrior until he grew tired of it. That 30 years peace is remarkably reminiscent of the decades-long peace that is supposedly occurred after the Battle of Baden. What exactly happened in the histories, I guess we can never be sure, but this is his story, or part of his story, as it's found in the Llandaff charters, and this is from the Holy Kingdom, and it just says here, I'm only going to read a part. King Tudric, when he was in his kingdom, enjoying peace and administering justice with his people, had less regard for temporal than eternal power, and accordingly gave up his kingdom to his son Moirig, and commenced leading a hermetical life among the rocks at Tintern. When he was there resident, the Saxons began to invade his land against his son Moirig, so that unless he individually would afford his assistance, his son would be altogether dispossessed by foreigners. Concerning which Tudric said that while he possessed the kingdom, he was never overcome, but was always victorious, so that when his face was seen in battle, the enemy immediately were turned to flight. And the angel of the Lord said to him on the preceding night, Go tomorrow to assist the people of God against the enemies of the Church of Christ, and the enemy will turn their face in flight as far as Pul Brachwael. And thou, being armed, stand in the battle, and seeing thy face and knowing it, they will, as usual, betake themselves to flight, and afterwards for the space of 30 years they will not dare in the time of thy son to invade the country, and the natives and other inhabitants will be in quiet peace. But thou wilt be wounded by a single stroke in the district of Ruth Tintern, and in 3 days die in peace. So, he goes, and the video that we have will tell the story. I'll let Alan tell the story from there.
Excellent. Well, let's take a look at the video then.
Tudric, king of Gluissing and Gwent in the late 5th century, successfully battled the invading Saxons, but tired of warfare and gave up his throne in favor of his son, Moirig. Tudric retired to the area we now know of as Tintern, where he lived as a monk. One day, when he was an old man, he had a dream in which an angel told him he would be mortally wounded in a battle with the Saxons, and shortly thereafter he learned that a Saxon raiding party was attempting to flee his kingdom with their loot. Tudric was able to delay their escape until his son arrived with more men and destroyed the Saxon raiding party.
So this is where they would have blocked them. When the river's down, you can see the stones in it.
But not before he was mortally wounded, as his dream foretold. He asked his son to take him to the Isle of Ecny in the Severn Estuary, where he wanted to be buried.
The story of this one is the battle was fought up at Tintern, where we've just been. Saxon invasion. They were trying to get out of Wales with their loot. They got to a ford at the river. The old King Tudric blocked them, stopped them getting across the ford, while Moirig's coming up Boris with his army to get hold of them before they escaped. The Saxons succeeded in wounding Tudric the monarch, the head, severe head, and he was obviously dying. He expressed a wish to be buried on the island of Ecny over in Cardiff Bay. But they got him this far on a cart, and he's badly wounded. They tried to clean him up again and misfound him, and he died in this area. So having died here, it's 508 is the correct date. and he died here, so they buried him here and they built a church over him. King Tudric fighting the Battle of Clinton, being injured, defeating the Saxons, being brought down in this direction, and finally dying at the fountain, and his son Maurice becoming king in his place, and Tudric being buried here, and then the church being built over his coffin. The significance is this: the altar is there, and if God sat on the altar, then this position is at the right hand of God on the north side. God is sitting on the east end looking west, so this is at the right hand of God and at the foot of God if God is sitting on the altar, right? And this is where he wants to be, at the foot of God and at the right hand of God. He's been dug up twice, 1617 and in 1881. And again, the stone coffin with bones. And they've got a little effigy statue of the king, statue of 3 bishops who are buried here. Right? So it's a very important church. Okay? 3 bishops. Right?
Okay, great. Yeah, so there is the great man in his late prime anyway, still full of vim and vigor and passion for his project, which we hope to advance. So thank you so much, Paul, for taking a few minutes with me today. I will see you again soon with another visit with Alan, you know, from some of the films that I'm recovering from my journeys over there. Yea, these many decades hence. So speak to you again soon.
Speak soon. Thank you very much, Paul. That was wonderful. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Paul. Really interesting. And what more gems are located in your archive? Well, we're all going to enjoy seeing more of your videos in the very near future. And I think I might have missed time today. I haven't actually got an hour and a half's version of show, so maybe I need to pad it out a bit. I don't think I got enough knowledge of Britain's hidden history to be able to do much padding out. Yeah. The recent videos we did of Penn Castle, now they elicited quite a detailed discussion on the Facebook group page, and it set people's minds aglow and thinking. And the comet was mentioned a couple of times in the videos, because it's possible that Keith has found evidence of the actual comet in the material that is trapped in those carved stones that he found. And all he used was an app on his phone called Lens app, which he took the photograph of, which he normally uses to differentiate between weeds and flowers when he's weeding the garden. And Lens app said that that was comet material effectively. So I'm thinking then about the comet. Was there, or is there now, anybody looking for evidence of the comet in the scientific community? And straight away you know about the tree dendrochronologists, because Alan Wilson and Barr and Blackett had a bit of discussion over their dating. So straight away, go into the archives of BHH playlists and find something that Ross has done on the comet. I found one, it's called Ross's take on the dragon that destroyed Britain. And that was part of his series From Babylon to Britain, 4-parter, 20 odd minutes each, maybe only 15 minutes. And if you look in the BHH playlists and go into some of these smaller, shorter videos, they all need clicking on to register that we've seen them. So we add the numbers to the views, and also likes would be handy. And so we'll take a look then at Ross's take on the comet.
In this series, yes, definitely going back to do more about ancient Babylon soon. Also Tiamat, the foundation stories, how they could originate in Wales rather than Babylon, which is another big subject, and how the British people went there and then back again. We'll come on to all that. What I want to do is one more thing from Wilson and Blackett about the dragons and this idea that the dragon is a manifestation or a symbol of heavenly objects, in particular comets devastating the earth. All right, so I'm going to read straight through the notes. There's loads of them. We will be putting a book together as soon as possible. Press all the buttons. Right, the coming of the dragon. Around the period of the 6th century AD, the most awesome event in the whole of British recorded and remembered history took place. As far as can be gleaned and calculated from the many surviving records, a tremendous catastrophe and parallel disaster came upon the British nation in AD 562. This gigantic destruction is awesomely detailed in a number of authentic records, yet no conventional history book written for education or for schools or the public at large ever mentions a single word of it. It's as if the Hebrews were to omit Moses and the Exodus from Egypt from their records. It defies the human imagination that ancient British writers set down the story for all the future generations. These records still exist, and yet there is a huge cover-up and a vast pretense that what is recorded never ever happened. In AD 562, a great comet was seen in the skies and approached close to planet Earth. Whether this comet struck the Earth or merely passed very close to a collision course, showering the Earth with monstrous masses of debris from its great thousands of miles long tails, is not quite clear. What is recorded is that Britain was devastated by the enormous blast of this collision. Vast tracts of the island kingdom were laid into total ruin. Mud slithered everywhere. The poisonous clouds enveloped the land. Nothing could live in the wide sweep of the stricken areas. Everything died. Then animals, both domesticated and wild, the birds, the fish, the reptiles, all died. Even the plants would not grow. All across Britain, the Roman era, cities and towns, and the great country villas and farms, all tottered into ruin. The walls were shaken to their very foundations and toppled, and the roof slithered down in a rush of debris. The ancient capital of Uriconium, Wroxeter, which I'm going to come back to soon, fell in ruin, never to again be inhabited or rebuilt. Amidst this colossal shambles of total ruin, the survivors stumbled around under darkened skies full of poisonous clouds, the droplets from which brought death to those who were unfortunate enough to be soaked by them. A great powerful state had been brought to near total destruction, and inevitable ruin in one disastrous moment. So the story of the great wasteland sung about by medieval romance troubadours and written of by medieval poets came into being. In a situation where the court's in exile in northern France, in Brittany, and they're sending knights, brave knights, out to go back to Britain to check to see if it's habitable again. What's the state of the land? And this would seem to be the inspiration for the stories of questing knights going out on their perilous journeys. So the question here, of course, is, the first question that strikes to mind, is this even possible? Well, in modern times, a similar event occurred in the vast empty wastes of Siberia. On the 30th of August 1908, a vast object from outer space struck the remote district of Tunguska in Siberia. The exact nature of this object is not known, and it's still debated. It may have been a vast ball of gases, a comet, or even a meteor, and less likely an asteroid. Modern Russian scientists have even proposed that whatever it was caused a vast atomic explosion. The result, however, was that the entire area of hundreds of miles around was entirely devastated. It took investigators 18 years to reach the centre point of the explosion. It seems very much to match with the Dark Age history accounts, the British accounts, of what was called the terrific blast. And the important thing here that Wilson Black can expand on is that the majority of the Earth is actually oceans, Pacific, Atlantic, and then you've got great wastelands like Siberia or Antarctica and vast tracts of South America. Events like this could have happened more often than we realise and would just not be recorded or known about. And they published a lot of this as a warning that something like this could happen again. And we need to learn from the lessons going all the way back to ancient Babylon. So the matter of comets or other heavenly bodies in collision with, or in near collision with planet Earth, has been much researched. The principal exponents being Ignatius Donnelly, Edmund Hawley, and Emanuel Velikovsky. You're not going to go through all that now. What we're going to do is give a flavour of what the British records say about this. A huge blast and vast screeching or squealing noises, earthquakes, vast dark clouds, poisonous fumes, inflammable liquids or gases which burnt fiercely, probably like naphtha, fires raging over devastated lands. So look at the most recent one we know about, this Tunguska. So here's some reports. In 1908, at 7:17 a.m. in the morning of 30th of June, people travelling on the Trans-Siberian Railway saw a glowing mass like a fireball shoot across the sky, out across the empty wastes of the steppes. Then a thunderous shock shook the train, and the din of vast explosions followed. The shock, similar to that of an earthquake, is recorded as causing Irkutsk seismograph to quiver for almost an hour, and seismographic stations all over planet Earth also recorded the quake of this explosion. Later researchers found whole forests where the trees had been sheared off at the stumps, even up to 40 miles from the centre of the blast. Trees stood bare without branches for miles around. They were unmistakable traces of a vast conflagration at the centre areas. So you can go through all this then. Now, it is what struck Britain in the ancient times similar or the same as this event. Some of the descriptions, I mentioned one in the previous video where we talked about there appeared a star of great magnitude and brilliance with a single beam shining from it. And as we go through the British records, you find more and more and more of this. And what Wilson Black had done with the research then, we've taken this out into French records and other records, all referring to the same thing. And there's no other records here. The sky appeared as if on fire, so that after the light at night became as vivid as that of day for 9 days, after which an intense heat came on, and a general want of waters in rivers and wells. Now, if we look at what happened after the Tunguska, we see a very similar situation. You see that the people there, they did all these kind of crazy things. People were out there we are. One feature of this strange event needs to be detailed. For 9 days and nights after the explosion, the whole of Western Europe was lit up 24 hours a day, as if it were noon. People did all the silly things that they always do in strange circumstances. They played tennis all night. They sat in their gardens reading books, and they went fishing and golfing and whatever. They also photographed each other during 9 days of noonlight. In this circumstance, it is not perhaps time to look again at the much derided British record, set down from old manuscripts by Edward Williams, the much maligned Iolo. This is exactly as he described it in his forgery, which obviously was 100 years before Tunguska, when he fabricated this idea of 9 days of day and night of light. Anyway, so some more examples here. As the dragon comes more and more into this, because what would happen is that the stories would get written, and the saints would be taking all the credit for getting rid of these dragons, these comets. And if you look in records, you'll find there used to be far, far more of these things in ancient times. You go out to Roman records, they're getting 50 or 60 of these things a year. Not like the modern, they're very rare now. There's theories for that. The energy is burnt out over time or whatever. But this is not really what we're here to discuss. What we're looking at is how this ties in. Like, for example, Gildas, in his De Excidio, which is of the destruction, in the most graphic form, and he attributed this disaster, was it the comet he's talking about? It sounds like. He says a punishment from God and the enormous devastation of Britain. You've also got the life of St. Ephrem, and he described it, and a beast obeyed, rolling his dreadful eye, uttering such an awful hissing noise that the shore resounded for miles. Vomiting blood as he went, he mounted the black rock of Hurglas, and where the last terrible roar he flung himself into the sea, where he perished miserably in the waters. It sounds like a comet splashing down in the Atlantic. St. Paul Aurelian, St. Samson, who is the son of Anna, who's the daughter of King Myrig, and the nephew of King Arthur, and dozens of others, all fled across to the court to get away from the devastation. And what's fascinating here is we got lots and lots of records. You can date it. You can narrow it down to around about 572. Now, here's the rub. It's not in any history books. It doesn't fit with the mainstream narrative. And it's described like this. Now, while no historian in Britain was prepared to hazard his or her career by entering what is forbidden territory and writing about the unmentionable, the physicists, astrophysicists, and astronomers of the world, they were unaware that there was a prohibition. They were studying, amongst other matters, the periodic comets which enter the solar system and offer possible threats to our planet Earth. Vital to these studies are historical references to both ancient cometary disasters and to near passages of comets coming close to Earth. Prominent among these researchers is Dr. Victor Klube of the Astrophysics Department of Oxford University. And Dr. Klube recognised the descriptions of the awesome disaster which overwhelmed Britain in the mid-6th century as the direct result of a close encounter or partial collision with a comet. The main body may not have struck Britain, but a huge shower of debris and boulders whistling along in the cometary train certainly showered the entire island. The wreckage was titanic and estimated as equivalent to 100 Hiroshima-type atomic bombs. This, of course, opened up the subject of 6th century British history and records. Here is the explanation of how the Arthurian kingdom began its collapse, exactly as it is stated in the much abused and allegedly forged and fabricated records, which do not conform to the 500 years of London government political policy. It raises the question of why ministers of state who have never read any of Wilson and Blackett's books write letters declaring them to be idiots. apparently the astronomers and astrophysicists are considered respected, reputable men, as they indeed are. But just by using the same data and coming to the same conclusions in greater detail, Blackett and Wilson's, as historians, are called misguided fools. And it does raise a big issue here. We have a situation where none of this is just even considered. It's very frustrating. As you'll see, there's more and more and more and more evidence becoming more and more powerful and strong. There's going to be a lot more of it, a lot more of the ancients, a lot more of the Babylonians. So remember to let people know, subscribe, and I'll see you. Don't forget, live show on Sunday, 8 o'clock. And until then, wish you all the very best. Heddwch.
It's beautiful to hear him say Heddwch, isn't it? In the chat, Megs W said that the comet is mentioned in David Owen's Runium O'Heed. I can't remember it being in there, so I'm going to listen out for that next time. I know he's talking about Maxon Ledig, isn't he? I thought Paul Haughton earlier did a great job pronouncing all those Welsh words, by the way. Forgot to say. Does 10 times better than me. And somebody, Rich DJ, suggests that I should sing a song. No. They tell me to shut up at funerals. That's why I joined a choir. So you don't have to sing. When you're in the choir, you just blend in with other people, and so you can be at the back and just do your one line here and there. It's great. We were talking about Keith Price's Marathon of the Saxons before we played the video, and maybe the comet is the reason why Penn Castle was never rebuilt. It's quite possible, isn't it? You know, whether everything else was destroyed, and Caer Mead doesn't appear to have been rebuilt after the comet. So Penn Castle didn't have a chance, I don't suppose. So Ross made a very convincing case there, and by showing all the other comet and aerial damage to the planet by near misses, because I think some of the near misses have been filmed as airbursts above the landmass itself, haven't they, causing destruction. I think one was recently filmed, a very small meteorite was filmed a year or two ago, passing over in Russia and exploded in the air, and that was a very small one, and it was like a huge bomb going off. And if you're in Russia now, mind you probably couldn't tell what was a bomb and what wasn't. I decided to do my own little bit of looking, as I mentioned earlier, to see some of this other evidence that Ross is convinced is out there that will become more and more prevalent. And only a quick search just found some talking about the tree dendrochronology. So I'll read what I actually found on the scientific papers, and I don't know if that'll be interesting or not, but at least you can look at the same scientific papers yourself, or rather the independent newspaper and their report on science. And it's not just Britain's Hidden History, Wilson and Blackett and Ross, who are describing the apocalypse from the comet. Here's another one in the independent newspaper, dated Saturday 9th of September 2000. And it's an article by Steve Connor, and it's entitled Apocalypse Then, How Comet Ended Roman Empire. A close shave with a comet nearly 1500 years ago caused a catastrophic change in the global climate, leading to famine, plague, the end of the Roman Empire, the birth of the Dark Ages, and even the legend of King Arthur. A leading British scientist said at the British Association meeting in London yesterday. Debris from the near mist bombarded the Earth with meteors, which threw enough dust and water vapour into the atmosphere to cut out sunlight and cool the planet, the weather, and cause crop failure across the northern hemisphere. The cataclysmic famines weakened people's resistance to disease and led to the Great Plague of the Emperor Justinian. It could also be responsible for the Arthurian stories about gods appearing in the sky, followed by a fertile kingdom becoming a wasteland. Mike Bailey, Professor of Paleontology at Queen's University in Belfast, said, "The central piece of evidence for a sudden global climate change about AD 540 comes from the study of tree rings, which highlight the years when plant growth was poor or non-existent. Oaks live for a long period, and in order for a lot of them to show narrow rings at the same time, it must have been a profoundly unpleasant event as far as the tree is concerned." The event of AD 540 is in, or at least the start of the Dark Ages, and in my view probably caused the Dark Ages. It was a catastrophic environmental downturn which shows up in tree rings from Siberia, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, North America and South America, he said. The idea is that the Earth was hit by a cosmic swarm, a whole stack of cometary debris in a short period of time, and that loaded the atmosphere with dust and debris and caused some sort of environmental downturn. Tree rings round the world clearly indicate a major climate change, unprecedented in the past 2 millenniums. This could have cooled the Earth by a few degrees, enough to cause crops to fail for several years in succession. It only requires a few degrees cooler conditions across the year for a few years, wiping out several consecutive harvests, and you've got a serious problem for any agricultural society. If you weaken a population through starvation and lack of sunlight, they are going to be susceptible to disease. It's a very unpleasant package of an environmental event. Famines and plague all happening inside less than a decade. It's nearly impossible to get historians to take this seriously. When confronted with this event, which is clear in the tree records, their immediate reaction is that if something like this had happened, it would be written down. Hence, they don't go and look in any real detail to see what is there, Professor Bailey said. I am calling for a debate by scientists and historians on how to approach the evidence for catastrophic events of this kind which were previously not known to have taken place. Hints of it appear in mythology, a subject normally too taboo for scientists and historians. Historians believe that King Arthur was a reference to the Irish sky god. Cuchulainn, Professor Bailey told the BA meeting, clearly there is some association between the death of Arthur, just around AD 540, and a bright Celtic sky god who is described in terms reminiscent of a comet. He said some authors suggested the AD 540 event might be the eruption of a supervolcano. I don't subscribe to that. I think if there had been one in the 6th century, we'd know about it geologically, he said. In my view, we had some sort of interaction with a comet, a cometary bombardment, not a full-blown comet because we wouldn't be here if we'd had that. And then Professor John Lowe, a climate scientist at the Royal Holloway College, London, said, "It's entirely plausible. If the older geological records we have evidence of such tremendous climatic viability over short timescales, and not all of it can be explained by the sort of cyclical phenomena that we know about. That isn't the only article in scientific papers about that comet. Here's another one in Science Daily. And this article is called Astronomers Unravel a Mystery of the Dark Ages. Undergraduates' work blames comet for 6th century nuclear winter. As dated February the 4th, 2004, Cardiff University. Scientists at Cardiff University, UK, believe they have discovered the cause of crop failures and summer frosts some 1500 years ago, a comet colliding with Earth. The team has been studying evidence from tree rings, which suggests that the Earth underwent a series of very cold summers around 536 to 540 AD, indicating an effect rather like a nuclear winter. The scientists in the School of Physics and Astronomy believe this was caused by a comet hitting the Earth and exploding in the upper atmosphere. The debris from this great explosion was such that it enveloped the Earth in soot and ash, blocking out the sunlight and causing the very cold weather. This effect is known as a plume and is similar to that which was seen when Comet Shoemaker Levy 9 hit Jupiter in 1995. Historical references from this period, known as the Dark Ages, are sparse, but what records there are tell of crop failures and summer frosts. The work was carried out by 2 Cardiff undergraduate students, Emma Rigby and Mel Simmons, as part of their student project work under the supervision of Dr. Derek Ward-Thompson. Their findings are reported in the February issue of Astronomy and Geophysics, the in-house magazine of the Royal Astronomical Society. The surprising result of the new work is just how small a comet is needed to cause such dramatic effects. The scientists calculate that a comet not much more than half a kilometre across could cause a global nuclear winter effect. This is significantly smaller than was previously thought. Dr. Ward-Thompson said, "One of the exciting aspects of this work is that we have reclassified the size of comet that represents a global threat. This work shows that even a comet of only half a kilometre in size could have global consequences. Previously, nothing less than a kilometre across was counted as a global threat. If such an event happened again today, then once again a large fraction of the Earth's population could face starvation. The comet impact caused crop failures and widespread starvation among the 6th century population. The timing coincides with the Justinian plague, widely believed to be the first appearance of the Black Death in Europe. It is possible that the plague was so rampant and took hold so quickly because the population was already weakened by starvation." And apparently that also happened over in North America. And this is an extract from National Geographic: Giant Meteorites Slammed Earth Around AD 500. And it's written by Richard A. Lovett, published 4th of February 2010. Pieces of a giant asteroid or comet that broke apart over Earth may have crashed off Australia about 1500 years ago, says a scientist who has found evidence of the possible impact craters. Satellite measurements of the Gulf of Carpentaria revealed tiny changes in a sea level that are signs of impact craters on the seabed below. according to new research by marine geophysicist Dallas Abbott. Based on the satellite data, one crater should be about 11 miles or 18 kilometers wide, while the other should be about 7.4 miles or 12 kilometers wide. So it seems to have been a fairly common experience around AD 500, and I've read on the BHH Facebook group forums that one of our members said that two parts of the Halley's comet drop off and come in across the Earth in different timescales to the passing of Halley's comet. So 8500, 8540, 8562 is the interesting thing is no one is arguing that there wasn't a comet. What they're arguing about is the date that parts of the comet caused the destruction. I think I would tend to believe Wilson and Blackett, and in one of the books there's a section by Alan Wilson on why the tree ring dendrochronology isn't as accurate as it could be. There's correspondence between him and certain tree ring readers over the dating, because one of them said it was 535 AD, and maybe you can make up your own mind whether Alan Wilson comes out on top. But the other thing is that the actual dating of AD is inaccurate. A lot of people use the two initials CE, so that could stand for Common Era, or it could stand for Christian Era, or it could even stand for Common Era, and the error being the dating of the point of reference. When was 0 or 1 AD? Was it the birth of Jesus the Christ? Or was it the death of Jesus the Christ? We've seen elsewhere that the Druids regarded, or the early British Christians rather, regarded the dating as being from the Ascension. So that's the crucifixion. So that could be 33 AD as a starting point. So we could be 33 plus years out from the start date. And there's two ways of dating it, either the Catholic Church way or the Apostolic Church way. Common Era. Common Era, yeah. We had a little bit of discussion on that on the Facebook group just the other day, because I never know whether to put AD or CE. And when you look through Alan Wilson's manuscripts, he changes it as well. Depends what's flavour of the month, I suppose, on the day. The fact of that comet is it must become accepted by mainstream history, and hopefully not in the not too distant future. There's some fascinating chat about it. I'd like to ask a question before I go into the chat, and in fact I'm going to give people some time to continue chatting, because my chat on the OBS system we use, the studio system we use, my chat is a couple of minutes behind everybody else's, so you can forget the slow stream about the chat, but have a look at 2 minutes behind. It's not fun. So my question is, I've started reading Archaeologists Rex Discovered. There is no index at the back. Has anybody else started work on an index or completed it? Is there an index somewhere for a book such as Archaeologists Rex Discovered? Because whilst I'm reading it, I may as well jot down references and create an index that we can put out as a PDF somewhere. but I'm hoping not to be the first person to do that for that particular book. So if somebody could get back to me on that in the live chat while I play last week's series of photographs. Everybody seemed to enjoy the guitar playing that comes from PowerPoint, or Microsoft rather. There was something else I wanted to ask then as well. Oh yeah, did anybody hear piano music playing in the background? That's not live in the studio, but it was live from downstairs where Margaret has her piano. It's one of those keyboard pianos. It's weighted, and she decided she'd take up learning the piano in lockdown, and she's getting very good at it. So that was coming up, the sounds was wafting up the stairs and being recorded in the background of my reading of newspapers and scientific papers. So we need more time for the chat. I need my question about the index of that particular book and other books answered. And here's the video I ran last week with my pictures and Microsoft's guitar background music. So that's given me a couple of more minutes to see some more chat. Can't write it down as quick as it's coming up. So let's go from early on in the chat, and we had Michelle. She liked the flute playing. It was nice, wasn't it? Maybe play a little bit more of that. And said it was enchanting. It was, and the pictures were great from across England. And I also liked revisiting Llanillid Core. It's a wonderful place to visit, and I know Ross did videos of music being played in the core just to test the acoustics. Worthwhile experiment. Myself and Michael, we took a seat in the chairs and just relaxed for a while. Maybe, I think we might have had a cup of tea, I'm not sure. And just let our thoughts drift. Now the church that is there next to Llanillid, the core, the old church there may be 1,000 years old, but it may sit on top of a place where St. Illyd, the Galilean, actually lived. Who knows? That would be worth visiting the church and seeing if you could go underneath it in a crypt at all to see what was really old underneath. Marshall said that the comet was the basis for the Morte Arthur romances, and I'm sure it was. Do you remember the film The Green Knight, where I think the main actor, or the actor who was the Green Knight, I think he was the Sergeant Major in the film Zulu, and I think he had Welsh parentage, born and bred in London though. He turned up on Wales History the other day as being of Welsh parents, but I think he was born in London. Do you remember him in Zulu? Why are we here? Because we're here. He had the Green Knight riding across what appeared to be a nuclear wasteland. Well known. So Patrick was talking about the comet and said that the shattered trees at Tunguska look like a shockwave from a very fast object, or maybe a blast above, making a circle. David Mosley confirmed that a steep angled entry would be circular-ish. And Paul O'Donoghue mentioned the fort with vitrified stone in a TV documentary. I think that was mentioned last week or the week before in the presentation about Pencastle in the chat for those shows. Somebody mentioned seeing those vitrified stones in the walls of the fort, and in that case it was up in Scotland, and only the upper levels were vitrified. Closer to the ground they were just normal stones. And we're talking of melting stones, I think, when we talk about vitrifying them. Marshall asked David what a camouflage was. I was rather hoping she wouldn't, because I couldn't pronounce the word, I didn't think. Camouflage, hope I got it right. David said camouflage refers to the shape of the shockwave caused by the expanding gases of an ignition or an explosion, as told to him in a documentary about Barnes Wallis. Unless, of course, David actually met Barnes Wallis, him of the bouncing bomb fame and other explosive devices. So Patrick referred to an electrical discharge, which could have also caused the same effect of flattened trees and circular-ish formation on the ground. Paul O'Donoghue said he saw a documentary on a paranormal or unexplained sort of TV program, which would have given maybe an alternative view of the Tunguska phenomena. I think I saw one on such a channel, and that's where I thought they were talking about the Black Knight satellite that I mentioned in last week's show. If you haven't looked it up yet, the Black Knight is an odd rock appearing satellite that revolves in the opposite direction around the planet, than the direction that humans put their satellites up. So this one goes from pole to pole. And there's speculation on TV programs such as Paranormal or Unexplained, which question whether the Black Knight is an alien sort of technology put there to spy on humanity. And they wondered whether or not the satellite is capable of defending itself when humans look at it, get too close, which they think that maybe humans have in the past, although the Tunguska effect was something like 1908, wasn't it? So I don't know if we were up in the looking at things like satellites back in 1908. Could understand it if they were referring to the Nazis trying to shoot down the Black Knight. There's one reference made to that in a paranormal program. And that caused an effect where they witnessed it defending itself, or possible bunkum. Better look into that for yourself, I think. Marshall wants to know more about the comet, and I took inspiration about the comet in a video I put out in the intervening period before I decided to take on board the live shows. And so maybe that particular video hasn't been seen by many. There was a couple of videos that went out as premieres without any particular fanfare, and not just mine but other people's. There was one I did with Gareth Jones, who gave evidence of a 1st century Christian place of worship in Caerwent, as evidenced from something in Caerleon, and that was interesting. If you haven't seen that, it's in the YouTube channel archive somewhere on the playlists, probably in early Christianity. The one I did referenced the Mabinogi, because when I read Discovery of the Ark of the Covenant as a PDF book, unfortunately Alan Wilson nor Baron Blackett get any royalties from that PDF book, so that's a bit unscrupulous of the person to publish it. But Ross acknowledged that it was a good publication. But when you read that book, and it's quite a heavy read from my point of view, I like things to be a bit more entertaining. There was detailed analysis after detailed analysis of the stories in the Mabinogi by Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett, and that was, I found, quite tough reading. The reason they put those stories in was that they found the location of the Ark of the Covenant from the star map, and the star map was discovered partly from the Mabinogi. So when you read the Mabinogi and the stories, you find that they are totally coded. So in every Mabinogi story, which is written down in the medieval period from very ancient oral traditional stories, changed to suit the time, in my opinion. The Mabinogi, for example, the dream of Rhonabwy, mentioned in last week's video by Bob Morgan, has given a great deal of evidence about the Battle of Badon and what took place afterwards, where, in other words, where Arthur actually went after the battle mentioned in the dream of Rhonabwy. That to me shows that the oral tradition that was out there was changed to the certain time to alter it to, in this case, the Battle of Badon. And I say that because they'll talk about the Red Knight going here, the Yellow Knight going there, and every time that they were talking about Red Knight, Yellow Knight, Brown Knight, Green Knight, that's a song there, isn't there? It's a Harding Taylor song. Red light, green light, driving through the dark night. One of my favourites. Sorry about that. Every time they talked about a planet, it was code. Every time they talked about a knight wearing coloured costume, it was code for a planet. So some of the planets that were doing things in the Mabinogi did so, crashed into each other or came very close to affect their gravitational orbits. Those occasions were in pre-recorded history. Where planets actually collided as witnessed by humans watching it, that took place before the modern civilizations in Mesopotamia, etc., 8,000 years ago. It must have taken place in the time of the so-called Atlantis, mentioned by Plato, or even earlier. And there are plenty of underwater, submerged cities around the planet that they're discovering now, with incredible architecture, especially off places like Sri Lanka and Japan and other places. Submerged must have been cataclysmic events caused by interplanetary activity, changes of the poles, maybe the gravitational poles, witnessed by humans and recorded orally or somewhere else. Well, we haven't found the somewhere else maybe, but the oral record ended up in the Mabinogi, in my opinion. And they've talked about comets in there as well, and they call them dragons. So that's why Ross described the comet of 562 AD as timed by Alan Wilson and Barham Blackett. He called it the dragon that nearly destroyed Britain, and it caused a bit of a nuclear war, wasteland by the looks of it. So I've put out my take on the Mabinogi, which just uses the comet in detail in there, and I've actually extended that further because on the Facebook chat once, somebody asking where the Mabinogi stories were, I said they were in the discovery of the Ark. I mentioned that the Mabinogi stories do more than just talk about history. They name the planets as gods, and eventually one of the largest planets, or maybe the sun itself, became the supreme god, and that, to my mind, gave us the idea of one god from the multitude of gods. We're not talking about the nature gods that were of this planet, talking about the interplanetary gods that were the other planets of the solar system. So there's a thought. As you can guess, I'm talking away but not keeping my eye on the current chat. So I'll have a quick look at that before I finish tonight. So Patrick talked about James McCanney's papers, saying about the proximity of a passing object, and he said that the tides would increase 8-fold if you halved the distance between the moon and the earth. And there's been documentaries which showed from seashell evidence, try saying that one fast with a couple of Guinnesses under your belt, seashell evidence proved that a day on this planet was only 21 hours long compared with 24 hours now, millions of years ago. And that means that the moon was closer to the earth. And science will tell you that the moon is moving away from planet Earth at maybe a centimetre a year. Doesn't sound a lot, but it will mean that at one point in time, the effect of the moon's proximity will weaken the spinning of the earth, and the earth will stop spinning. Then one side will boil and the other side will freeze. A pleasant thought. Just in case you weren't entirely happy about the findings in Cardiff University, that a meteorite didn't have to be a kilometre across to wipe out all life on Earth could only be half a kilometre across. You know, that's very encouraging news, wasn't it? So, 2 more from Arnie, and then by which time, and straight after the 2 from Arnie, I'll put on my usual music type videos, which I've done another one, and I'm hoping it will pass the YouTube monetization censorship. Whilst I'm doing that, I'll read the current chat. Jamie gave me permission to do anything I wanted with that video, but that was about 10 years ago. If you look at Jamie Loader on YouTube, you'll find him playing that particular song in a jamming session in the Bush Inn 100 yards down the road from me. So that's when I first heard it, and in the jamming session. I'm getting a bit old now, I don't go there anymore. Still like Guinness though. So a little bit more chat. Marshall said that Orthodoxy have accepted that there was a Troy, because they resisted accepting there was a Troy for years, and now they accept it. She also mentioned that CE can also be BCE, before the Common Era, before the Christian era. A lot of people are appreciating my waffling, so that's good. Gary Taylor said that a rerun of my photos is worthwhile as well. And we had details of the Sergeant Major in Zulu being with Nigel. Where is he? Colonel Sergeant Bourne was played by Nigel Green. And camouflage is pronounced camouflage. David Mosley stated an index across all books was one of Ross's gross 144 research projects. I think we need a little bit more work on all these projects. Paul O'Donoghue said that sand would be turned to glass if a comet passed over a desert. And do you know, I'm sure I saw a documentary about India. So I don't know whether it was desert or plains in India. But there's only two places on Earth where they've got a certain type of glass, silica. It's made as Paul said, as if a comet passed overhead. That kind of glass, and whatever it was in India, only existed in one other place on the planet, and that was in the Nevada desert in the USA, because of the nuclear testing in Nevada. So that implies that what created the same material in India was made by nuclear fusion of some kind. And of course the Bhagavad Gita and books like that talk about cities fighting in the sky. They sound very much like UFOs. But that's a speculation that we don't go anywhere near on Britain's Hidden History. We're only dealing with the facts as we research them. So thank you very much for your company again this evening. And as we draw to a close, we've had the violin playing, that's rather beautiful. That last one there, Dragon on a Flag. I've liked that song for a long time. I thought I'd put pictures to it. The only reason I put pictures to people's videos like that is because they just have picture, in this case, of a red dragon on a flag. And the video doesn't move, so I thought, well, it may as well be my pictures, mightn't it? So I'd like to say au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, good night, goodbye, nos da, and see you next time. And don't forget, if you seek, you will find.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it informative. Britain's Hidden History Group has so much more going on our YouTube channel. The one you're watching now, there's a live stream, 8 o'clock UK time every Sunday. We speak to people like Wilson and Blackett, reprint their old books and help produce new ones. We go researching to the tops of mountains, all the way down to the bottoms of caves. Busily recording the books, you can listen to them as well, and looking at mysteries and working out what we're not being taught in schools and preserving it, because the physical and written evidence is rapidly disappearing. You can also find out how to read ancient writing and hieroglyphs using the Welsh language. It's amazing. There's a Facebook group where this is being discussed. Along with a website, you can buy the books and help us. Also, as you can see, there's now a Patreon page where just a few pounds a month will make all the difference in trying to keep the project going and preserve this history for future generations, and also to find out for ourselves what is going on, what is Britain's hidden history. So until the next time, Heddiw!